All right, let's get talking. Welcome. I'm Todd Fisher, founder of Linked Health Innovations. In today's Let's Get Talking session, I had the privilege of sitting down with Canary Speech. A few notes before we dive in. Unfortunately, Patty Kupenbender, the Chief Revenue Officer for Canary Speech, had some technical difficulties and was unable to join the session. A huge shout out to Caitlin Brooksby, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Partnerships for Canary Speech, who provided us some invaluable insight into Canary Speech as a company and how they're pushing healthcare forward. I hope you enjoy the very real conversation that Caitlin and I had. I hope to see you again soon in a future Let's Get Talking session. Thank you. So good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us in another Linked Health Innovations episode. Today, we're going to be talking with Canary Speech. First, a little bit of a teaser. Although there's been a lot of buzz in industry around AI, generative AI, and the like, many aren't aware that traditional natural language processing, which has really been around for nearly 6 decades, if not more, has advanced well beyond just purely natural language processing. It has leapt over into the true vocal biomarker analysis space. What the future of technology holds for this technology, especially in healthcare, is really hard to imagine, but I expect it to be remarkable. My name is Todd Fisher, founder of Linked Health Innovations, and I'll be the host for this discussion with Canary Speech. For more information on Linked Health Innovation, please visit our website or social media channels via LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. For more information on Canary Speech, please visit their website. They're at www.canaryspeech.com. And for the next hour or so, we have the very fortunate opportunity to have this conversation with Canary Speech. Joining me today from Canary Speech will be Patty Kupenbender, the Chief Revenue Officer. Patty has over 40 years of experience in healthcare and with companies of the likes of McKesson and Cardinal Health. Also joining me today is Caitlin Brooksby, Vice President for Marketing and Strategic Partnerships for Canary Speech. Caitlin has more than a decade of experience helping startups in both the healthcare and technology sectors. When it comes to seeking medical care, we traditionally look for visual cues that tell us whether a person's physical or mental health is changing. Certainly, these physical cues are key, but in a lot of cases, the physical cues can actually be a little bit late. The evolution of voice analysis and biomarkers that Canary Speech has developed really truly is remarkable, and I think will pave the way for future advancements in healthcare. In this regard, before we get started, I think everyone, the question is, keep in the back of your mind where you think this technology and Canary Speech can be used in your healthcare settings, but also potentially as a patient and consumer or loved one in your family. To get us started, we'll do some short introductions, and we'll start with you, Caitlin, and then assuming that Patty's able to jump on, we'll go with her, and then we'll jump right in. Caitlin. You're on mute.
I was texting Patty trying to help her.
You're good.
So thanks for joining, everybody. I'm Caitlin Brooksby. I'm VP of Marketing and Strategic Partnerships. I was able to start my career in the hospital setting, which really introduced me to healthcare. I worked for Intermountain Health, and then I worked at 3M, where I worked in their coding software area and really got to understand healthcare from the front to the back end. It was wonderful. I've worked at startups, and now I've been at Canary Speech for over 4 years now, and absolutely love it. And I'm excited to share with you guys what we are doing.
No, thank you, Caitlin. And for those who have perhaps just joined, Patty, who the Chief Revenue Officer for Canary Speech, is having a bit of technical difficulties, and instead of delaying this, we decided to jump right in. Hopefully, she'll be able to join here shortly, and if she does, we'll do a short breakout and obviously let her introduce herself. But without that, we're going to go ahead and jump in. Are you fine with that, Caitlin?
Yeah, let's do it.
Awesome. So let's get talking. So, Caitlin, I guess tell me a little bit about Canary Speech. I think obviously, what's your core mission, and what's the vision that you guys have for Canary Speech in the future?
Yeah. Well, I think about it really brings me back to what our founding story is and to really understand our mission and our vision. So our founding story is really one of friendship, talent, and it began with one question. So Henry O'Connell and Jeff Adams, they're our co-founders. They've been friends for decades. And Jeff Adams is without a doubt one of the renowned pioneers in the voice industry. He's a wonderful person as well. Look him up on LinkedIn. He does webinars, and he is just a fountain of knowledge. So he worked at Nuance, where he led the team that created Dragon Naturally Speaking. And then his startup in Boston was acquired by Amazon just over 10 years ago. And they put them in a room in Seattle, as he says it, and said, we want to create the Alexa, right? What we know today as the Alexa, which really, as far as speech, this is known as far field speech. So when we're able to talk to a device anywhere in the room, that didn't exist to that point. And so really exciting. He's just a pioneer. So Henry and Jeff were catching up 7 years ago, and Henry posed Jeff a question because Henry has background as a scientist, and then ran medical companies. And he said, how can we as humans, we understand when someone's sad, upset, why couldn't a computer do this, or AI? Well, now you would know that industry as digital vocal biomarkers. When we pose this question, really, that didn't really exist. People still question, can you do that? And maybe you're questioning that as well. Can you do that? But what we do is we look below the level of speech, and we're not looking at what you're saying, but we're looking at how you produce voice. And so I'll talk more about that, but really our mission is simple. It's to advance vocal biomarker solutions in the fields of digital healthcare and wellness to significantly improve global access to care, time to diagnosis, and global health outcomes. So that's our mission. And
Caitlin,
yeah,
at what point, in that journey, so if you go back the 7 years or so, at what
yeah.
point did you think did you guys know you had something like truly special?
Oh, that's probably a different answer for everyone.
Yeah.
But I think for me, it was, we were right in, it was right before, and so this was a couple years into it, but it was right before the pandemic, and the World Health Organization chose us as one of the 8 leaders that would impact global health, and I was able to present to them. And I think at that point I realized, we have to have this type of technology and this type of innovation if we're going to impact on that global scale, if we're going to be able to help people in that don't have access to healthcare, that don't have a doctor or specialties in their area. But I think it's something like 80, it's high 80s% of the world have access or have a smartphone, which
Yeah.
you wouldn't think that, but that it's pretty high. And so if you have a smart device, you can have the ability to use our technology. And so that's a inspiring message. And I think that's when it hit me that, this is where healthcare is going to go.
That's where the light bulb just went off in my head. I think when you think of some of the disparities in health equity, that I think COVID actually just put a magnifying glass on for people that don't have ready access to go to a primary care physician to even, assess, to my opening, a visual cue that could really be an avenue to potentially get line of sight on possible disease and chronic illness in populations that can't make it to a doctor necessarily, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's special. So for the audience, so what are vocal biomarkers? Like how do they work?
Yeah. Okay. So we have identified, we actually have 10 patents, 12 pending right now in this area. But we're human, right? Our body produces voice the same way, all of us. And so we discovered that there's over 2,000 individual biomarkers that we can use to create our models. We use AI and machine learning to create disease-specific models. So we screen for mental health. We screen for depression and anxiety. We're actually applying to the FDA for de novo right now. It hasn't been done yet. And so we have models for Alzheimer's, Huntington's. Our Huntington's model is over 98% accurate. We created it in a partnership with Harvard and Beth Israel. And so that's what we're looking at. A lot of when you hear about maybe emotional sentiment, that's different. They're looking at NLP, right? So natural language processing. So the words that we're saying. And we'll get into more of why this approach is unique to us, but also this unique approach is scalable, and scalable in both the disease space as well as the language vertical.
So is it a fair question, much like our fingerprints, does everybody have different biomarkers, or are they somewhat universally the same?
Yeah, they're universally the same. So that's what makes it so that you don't need a benchmark, right? You don't need to give it more data of just from you to get a more accurate score. It's all data from everybody. And when we have the correct labeled data sets, that is what grows and improves our algorithm.
So that's interesting. So the technology has progressed to the point where even though we all have the same figurative vocal biomarkers, you guys have matrixed them back, and I'm probably being a layman there saying that, but you've basically matrixed them back to disease conditions, and different vocal markers or changes in vocal markers can give you indications of disease progression. So that's really neat. How does it work in early detection? How early, and I think in a disease or in a chronic illness, is it able to start to indicate?
Yeah, so that's different for each indicate in each disease, but what's really exciting is that we have an MCI, so mild cognitive. People on this call probably know what that is, but MCI that's pre Alzheimer's essentially. And so we have a model for that, which doesn't really exist today. The screening for that is not perfect. And so with our Huntington's model, we were able to, it can detect Huntington's before the human ear can hear. So before a doctor could even be able to pick it up. So it just depends on, you have to look at what's our gold standard today. How are we doing it? And what does that mean to be better, right? So sooner, more objectively, when you look at mental health, right now, the gold standard is to fill a self evaluation, a self questionnaire, and the doctor consults with you, right?
Yep.
So we've created a model for depression and anxiety that's completely objective. So when you say, how are you doing today? Oh, I'm doing well. I'm doing great. That could be a complete lie. And our models would be able to pick up the depression in your voice. And so that opens the door for, we start to talk about PTSD and one day I truly hope that we can get something that would assist with suicide, because suicide prevention, I mean, it's horrible what's happening right now with the increased numbers of suicides, and to be able to assist family members and healthcare professionals in that area would be wonderful.
So that leads me to my next question. Then, are you guys pursuing both, what I guess what I'll call intentional, which is somebody knows they're speaking into a microphone to be assessed, versus I'll call it passive? Are you pursuing both avenues of use cases?
Yes, so I would say yes, we have, but our primary right now is um someone can it's it's intentional,
Okay.
because we're setting this up just as it can be used in home health, right? So um a person wants to, or say, um you know a granddaughter's visiting grandma, and she checks her glucose levels, she checks her blood pressure for her. Well, she could also check her mental well-being using Canary. And so it is just like collecting any biomarker, and through a test, right? And so really we focused on this area a lot due to privacy, a lot due to creating the models, and just really what the industry was calling for. Um, when you get into passive listening, right, that gets into some data privacy. You think about Alexa, about those devices, right, that are always on. Yeah, but that's a place that we would explore and have the capabilities.
So a little bit about, some blocking and tackling, obviously, especially coming out of the healthcare world, the hospital space. There's been a lot of emphasis right now on some security and HIPAA and personal privacy. How does Canary Speech approach that question?
Yeah. So we actually love this question because we get really excited and I guess kind of nerdy. Not me. No, 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 the other for engineers, of course. But
Yeah.
no, we were born within like the constructs of the healthcare field. When we started out, pharmaceuticals, we work with pharmaceuticals, but they were our first client. And so, we're going into clinical trials, and you think about that environment and what type of privacy, and we are HIPAA compliant, and we do this by collecting de-identified data. So we offer this fully anonymous solution, which is really exciting for the different use cases, and all research data collected through our API is de-identified in the analysis environment, and this really ensures user protection. When you think about employee wellness,
Yep.
that gets really exciting, because you don't want to know what you don't want your employer to know that you're depressed, right?
Yeah.
Probably, I'm assuming. And so it allows it to be in these type of environments. And so our technology is sys control audited, vulnerability, API penetration testing. Really, in short, we take this seriously. It's been a priority, and we really work with the best companies in the world. We're a Microsoft partner. We've been audited by our investor, Hackensack Meridian Health, out of New Jersey, the largest health care system there in New Jersey. So yeah, we've set it up to be in the healthcare environment.
Yeah, I think, and I think it's probably a fair question for people to ask, but I also think that much like any other physical cue that somebody has for a possible illness, like I think it's just one more data element that obviously gets protected, like any other part of someone's personal health record. So,
Yeah.
I guess in that light, I think as far as integrating with clinical workflows, how do you guys, and are you planning to integrate with other systems? How does that work?
Yeah, so we are, I mentioned Hackensack Meridian. We're in discussions with them about integrating into their EMRs. About our most recent integration, and that was Microsoft Team for Healthcare. And so we are within the telehealth. We have a amazing API set that we're able to integrate within a telehealth type video call.
Uh-huh.
And so if you think about applying our voice analysis technology to such a innovative product as that Microsoft produces, I think it really starts to talk about how are we going to really address these mental health challenges and enable early intervention. How do we talk about reducing healthcare costs and scale remote, patient monitoring solutions? We only need 40 seconds of speech. And so, and it can be any on any topic, right?
Okay.
And so you start to eliminate these lengthy questionnaires, and it starts to become into this environment of just talking to your physician, talking to your caregiver, a very human action that we do every day, that we're doing right now. And then gleaning from that human interaction, a very natural human interaction, all of these data points that then can help the person.
Yeah, so obviously it speaks volumes. I think serendipitously it speaks volumes to everything that's at our core, obviously from a linked health perspective. But I think it's to keep things conversational. I think if we look even back at how this webinar and this session started, obviously we keep it real. But I think that, and I only call that out again for our audience to say, like, that's how we're moving the needle in healthcare when we start to move from being able to detect changes in health that are truly unscripted, right? I think it becomes much more natural. So, so you mentioned mental health. Are there other industries that you see this really taking root in healthcare?
Yeah, definitely. We Parkinson's, we're
Mm-hmm.
starting that with Harvard as well. You think about maybe like different personality disorders, all the way to just, yeah, cognitive diseases, Alzheimer's, Huntington's, Parkinson's. Um, that's really our focus, but we are in discussions about autism
Mm-hmm.
and COPD. And so there are other areas that we can explore. We're a voice company, and so we have the ability to explore these areas. And so we love when partners have a real world fit that could directly impact people, and we let you know if it's possible or not. Like where we look at the data, we look at the industry and what's been done, and said, we were just actually accepted. Our paper was accepted at Canary Speech, which is the world's largest voice conference. It's in Dublin this year. And so, yeah, if anybody is interested on reading that, I'd love to share it with them. But yeah, so we are constantly advancing and moving with the industry.
So, where my head immediately goes, and probably because of my most immediate background is in the post-acute care space for the audience. It's obviously in the home health. It's in the hospice, the palliative care, those experiencing chronic illnesses like obviously COPD, as you mentioned, potentially, CHF, Alzheimer's, dementia. I think when you look at the settings of obviously in the home and obviously remote patient monitoring over the past, really since COVID, put it on a faster course of adoption. There's going to be so many avenues to put it. I think the technology conversationally in the home, potentially in assisted living facilities, anywhere where there's an honest conversational exchange with somebody that one, we perhaps already know their diagnoses, right? But the data could help them plan from a prognosis perspective where they need to be positioning earlier in intervention or conversations around how a disease is advancing. So I think there's tremendous opportunities in those that obviously have chronic conditions, those in Medicare, traditionally Medicare populations that are farther along in some of those chronic illnesses as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So how do you guys stay up to date with where the industry's going? It sounds like, and hopefully a fair question, you guys are well beyond natural language processing. So I guess you guys aren't necessarily taking cues from anybody. You're writing your own story and obviously creating your own path. How do you guys stay up to date with where you need to go?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to my mind is we are still led by our founder, Henry O'Connell, as he's just really, he's willing to ask the question that people aren't. And so I think that science, that natural questioning, I think that really allows us to keep exploring. But I mean, I can't say who we are all talking to, but we are talking to the leading technology organizations in the world, and not just in healthcare. And
Okay.
so when they're coming to us saying, hey, we want to explore this now, it's real. I get so excited because we weren't talking about that 5 years ago, and now everyone, I think with chat GPT, I think it just kind of put voice, even though that's generative
Yep.
AI, right? We're not generative AI, but it put this voice AI on the board, right? And so people are now asking people, I think people are now saying, okay, this is going to be around. How is it going to be around? And so that's really our biggest question, is use case, right? How are we going to implement this into everyday processes that currently exist, those workflows? And so it's almost like staying up to date. Our CTO, Nate, he was over 10 years at Nuance, Cerence in their automotive division,
Yeah.
and he PhD, speaks like 7 languages, like just a genius. And so when you have those type of individuals, again, it's just being able to constantly be that scientist, be that investigator. And I think that's what's important, and that's definitely a value of our team.
Yeah, I think, to sidetrack us, it's obviously AI is almost I think almost if there is a bad way, become almost a kitchen term now. I think everybody's pursuing it, and the value is going to be tremendous. And where you see generative AI and its ability to do things like case summarization, and what that impact from a positive perspective is going to be in healthcare for physicians and nurses, it's going to be special. But so much of that is, I'll call it, a lot of it's middle office out right now, and meaning it's informing how to operate better. It's not truly patient. And so that's what really truly stands out for me, is how the technology is actually, it's patient first, not business first, if that makes sense to
Oh
the
yeah.
audience.
Oh yeah, completely. I mentioned I worked at
Yeah.
3M, and it was all coding software. And as much as I loved it there, my team was amazing. I really missed being in the hospital where I was interviewing patients and, running health community events to help people who didn't have access to healthcare, and just being with the people. And so that's why I love Canary so much, is because I'm able to really talk directly. It's one of the most innovative technologies out there right now, and I can pinpoint and take that line and correct and connect directly to how it's going to impact the patient. And so it's a really, really wonderful environment to be in.
Yeah, so I have one question, and it goes back a couple questions, but it's fair. I want to make sure I call it out. Is from the audience. Let me open up the QA. Is obviously, and you mentioned it was around the rise of depression in children, and so obviously, and you mentioned it, but are you currently exploring formal relationships with people to try to impact the rise of depression in children?
Yes, actually, Henry's going out to Atlanta next week to talk to a group that is in high risk youth.
Okay.
So yes, we are. And when I mentioned we're applying to FDA clearance, that is going to be 18 and older, the approved FDA, because children are a different target, segment. So we need, there's different regulations, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
that but I think it's an important area. And so do I think our models they would work on under 18? Yes, but we're going to specifically focus on that as we build out our depression and anxiety models.
Yeah, I think, and to go back to, I think where our conversation was, I think around AI, what I see in other industries is the evolution of, and for the audience, the smart hospital room. I don't believe we're too far off from having everything from obviously, and it might scare people, video cameras, but obviously listening devices in hospital rooms to facilitate workflows for the clinicians, but all of that's going to be passively gathering information. And I think, the day has come, if it hasn't already come, that somebody through your technology might be in the hospital for one disease condition, but through the biomarkers, you may discover a completely different condition, right, for that individual that's unrelated to why they are even in that setting. And I think that's pretty exciting when I think about that possibility.
Yeah, it really is. And it's like we don't have to collect a different set of 40 seconds to screen for all the disease states that we have.
Okay.
Right. So that's also as far as a time and cost efficient. That's really helpful.
Are you finding, ad hoc question here, are you finding, or do you worry about finding physicians that are resistant to explore that technology, right? To dig a little deeper, that if a vocal biomarker says Todd has, this chronic illness, for them to take that to heart and say, all right, let's go explore it.
No, not on that level. The only pushback we've ever gotten is when we were talking to healthcare systems. We're in the boardroom and we've had the behavioral health leaders say, we're already over, we're filled. We can't necessarily take care of more people. Why do I want to identify, right?
Yeah.
Like more individuals with depression. And it was interesting, the leader, I don't know exactly what his role was, but he said, but that's our job. That's our job, to find people who need help. And so, yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword that way, where it is a screening tool and it will find more people who need help. And so and that's why we look to our partners who provide that care, because they are just as or more important than what we do. It's a partnership, because we can screen, but we're not going to be providing the care for them. That's not what we do, right?
Yeah.
And so it is a whole system.
So perhaps a Southern question. I think you probably covered it, but it's worth asking. Is, since it doesn't really rely on natural language processing, do does accent matter? Like, obviously I'm from the South. I might have a slightly Southern speech than somebody from up obviously in Boston, and is all of that irrelevant to the technology?
So I wouldn't say it's all completely irrelevant, but what I'll tell you is our English model is 80% similar to our Japanese model. So
Wow.
you have to let that sink in, because
Yeah.
that is wow. Um, and so when you look at language, when you look at speech patterns or accents, uh, it's all about making sure you collect the right variety of demographics. And so we do that. We do that with every disease model that we create. We make sure that we have the diverse demographics to represent everyone. And so that we're not just building a model based off of, Provo, Utah, right? Where we are right now. And so that is an important element into our technology, but it doesn't affect it as much as people would think.
So that's like the wow factor just went off. So Southern obviously is probably the most simplest example, but you called it out. So obviously other languages with different dialects, with different alphabets and completely different enunciations of obviously words and everything and consonants. So the technology itself is able to look beyond those differences and still produce a model that is predicting disease. That's remarkable.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, I think just let that sink in for the audience. I mean, like, because when you think of, you know, people, like if they're Japanese or Chinese, or if you know somebody that's obviously from Russia or the Ukraine, like you're talking significantly different, not just languages, but
Oh,
how
sure.
you enunciate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that's remarkable. So maybe a little bit about your competition. I think I wouldn't think you'd have any competition in this space, from what I'm hearing, what the audience is hearing. But do you have competition in this space?
Yeah, and we do, and we want it because that means that it gives validity to what we're doing. We have about, I don't know, five to six like direct competitors, but a lot of them are like heavily use NLP, like I discussed. And, our patent portfolio is, well, as one lawyer said it at Hackensack Meridian, rock solid.
Okay.
So, we have early on applied for these patents, and they're actually kind of exciting. They're like really fun to read because you think, oh, what? Okay, it's like voice analysis for detection of disease on a smart device. I think that's one of our patents, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, there are people doing it, and like you said, they kind of the explosion of AI. But you could take this technology and you could apply it to so many different industries. But we stuck to health, even though it's definitely the mountain to climb for as far as adoption. These type of technologies take over a decade to adopt fully into the healthcare market, but we feel it's a noble cause. So that's where we are. That's where we put our stake in the ground.
So from a consumerism perspective, for those that obviously might be looking at it from an individual or family, is there a consumer version of the app? I mean, can I go to the app store? And if not, I mean, is that in the future for this technology?
Well, we've gone back and forth on that. We've really just decided that we are B2B to C,
Okay.
because I mentioned that, the whole picture of this is the care aspect. We don't want to be giving people Alzheimer's prognosis and them not having that right environment or connection to, that's some serious news.
Yeah.
So we really focus on integrating, and that's why we have an API we can integrate into any health app, teleservice, conference, or like a call center, like a health call center.
Okay.
And so it's where it's the point of care that we want to be integrated into.
So I guess with that, that's a great segue. What kind of support do you guys provide? Like when obviously when you go to business, do you provide full scale, here's the technology, here's obviously how to implement it, and then here's how to react to what the data is telling you? Is it?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I say every client is a partner, because together we're innovating the next generation of health tech, voice health tech. And so um we want our clients to use us as a voice expert. So we, within implementation, we're talking about where, when, how, what questions. We have the science to back it all up. And so when our clients have that question,
Mm-hmm.
if we don't have the answer, we're going to find it. And I've seen that done time and time again by our speech scientists.
So as we approach our 45-minute mark, another question came in. And it's great. So how do I get access to Canary Speech, right? How do I, if I want to explore this in my hospital, my healthcare system, my assisted living facility, or my home care setting, how do I get it?
You can actually download it off our app off the App Store right
Okay.
now, or Google Play. And just sign up and go test it out, see what it is. You can set up a call with me or Patty.
Okay.
And we can go through it. So I know we have a demo on our YouTube channel, Canary Speech YouTube channel. So yeah, there's a few ways to see it in action.
Yeah, and so I can cover some of the blocking and tackling in the beginning. You guys are obviously based here in the United States, in Utah. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah,
Awesome.
our team is all around. We got people in Texas and California and Massachusetts. So
Well, Caitlin, I think that wraps up all of the exciting questions I had, and I think the questions that I've seen online. I think in closing for the audience, I guess first I thank you, Caitlin, for jumping on and Canary Speech, and it's unfortunate that obviously Patty couldn't get online, but I think you answered everything for the audience awesomely. So I think the intent of this webinar, to make sure everyone is aware, is obviously to get you talking about healthcare in a way that perhaps is a little different than what we see out there normally across our social media channels, what we normally get in some of our professional settings, and some of the other echo chambers that where information is shared. So you guys are definitely onto something. I thank you guys again. What I'll do is, obviously this will be posted onto our YouTube channel, and it'll be shared with Caitlin so that they can post this as well. And if you have any questions or interests, please reach out to Canary Speech and look to find out how you can integrate them into your healthcare setting. And with that, Caitlin, I'll close. Thank you again, and thank everybody for joining.
appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Bye.
Bye-bye.